Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you all for coming to today's Restaurant News Networking meeting. We are a group of vendors in the restaurant industry. We are experts in our field, and we are here to help each other, and we are here to help restaurateurs solve any problems that they might have. If you are watching this on YouTube and you'd like to get a hold of us, please give us a call at 561-620-8888. And our YouTube channel is Today's Restaurant. For those of you who have never been on it, please go on it and subscribe and give us a thumbs up so that we can build the channel. The more we build the channel, the better off it is for all of us. I sent out a notification about this meeting on all our social media platforms yesterday. Well over 200,000 people potentially. So I invited people to come to the meeting, and I'm getting some good responses from it. So hopefully we'll have some new vendors and some restaurateurs to come and attend the meeting. Today I wanted to bring up.
Oops, sorry. Hold on.
Hey, the dog.
Aww.
I want to bring up a topic that we did in the 9 o'clock meeting, and of course it takes off like a spider's legs. As you all know, inflation is affecting everybody, either from the gas pump or at the grocery store. I hear, a dozen eggs used to be $1.80 and now they're $3.80. And, what do you do about that? Well, restaurateurs are facing the same problem. And I know we have an expert here in the group who I'm sure will have something to say about this. But, a restaurateur, if they're buying produce or meat or poultry, whatever, their prices are going up. But inflation is going up as well. But restaurateurs' prices to the public are not going up anywhere near the inflation rate. So they are losing profit as the weeks go on. So the question is, what does a restaurateur do to negate that situation? And what are you doing in your business if it affects you at all? I'm going to, open it up to the group. If you have any thoughts on it, I'm sure Chris will have something to say on that.
I was wondering if you were considering me the expert on this topic.
Absolutely.
So I've been on both sides of the equations. Past life when I was in the corporate world and operations and a CEO, whatever. We finally got to the point where we had to be very strategic about how we handled pricing. In part because the average consumer, I don't believe, even understands why prices go up. They don't understand that, the average inflation rate over the last 20-something years is what, 2.5, 2.6%. That's changing rapidly because of what's been going on the last 2 years. You have to have a strategy for your prices to steadily rise on your menu as the cost of doing business rises. Because it's not just the cost of the food. Labor costs are steadily creeping up. There's always upward pressure on labor. Every 5 years, if you're leasing your property, there's potential for a lease renewal to come up where the rent goes up, the insurance goes up, everything goes up. You have to understand you have all of this pressure. What way too many people do is they fall way behind the curve and then they go, oh my God, we got to take our prices up. And then they want to take a big 10, 15% price increase in one fell swoop. And the problem with that is when a customer comes in and they open up that menu and they can see, oh my God, look how much the prices went up. So the best strategy I've ever seen, and I actually used this for years in my corporate life, was you took about 25% of the menu each quarter and you took an increase. You also strategically find some items that maybe you can take a small decrease on. The other thing that you do is you reformat your menu so that the items aren't showing up in the same place. Mm. And what that creates is a little bit of confusion on the part of the customer, because they can look at the menu and see a lot of prices are the same. They can see, yes, some went up. They also might notice, hey, wow, that price went down. But the fact that the items aren't located in the exact same spot that they're used to finding them every time they go to your restaurant makes it harder to identify. So it's almost like, unfortunately, you kind of have to camouflage your price increases. And you have, again, you have to do it strategically. Over the course of a year, every part of your menu pricing needs to be addressed. But what you can't do, and I see people do this all the time, is they take the whole hit at the same time because they let themselves fall behind. It's a reaction, it's a reactive price increase response rather than a proactive understanding of economics and that I will always have to do this. So I don't know if that makes sense or not. And to compound it, in my current business with strategic supply chain partners, I get to see a lot of data. I won't name any names, but there is one publicly traded national distributor who posts on their website. They have raised their prices 14.4% this year. Well, 14.4% is about 5.3 points higher than the latest rate of inflation. So you kind of have to, you know, the other thing you have to recognize and understand is in some cases, your suppliers are raising prices even higher, faster than the rate of inflation is going. But again, you're in the restaurant business, and the key word there is business. You have to understand, run it like a business. You have to make hard business decisions, and you can't be emotionally attached to the recipe or recipes that maybe provoke you. You know, my old joke is always, Grandma had a great, recipe. Let's start a restaurant. And it's an emotional decision. It's not a business decision. And people need to learn how to do this as a business. It's a hard business. It takes hard decisions, and you got to be dispassionate, unemotional, and very objective to do this. And you have to be really smart and strategic. The rest of the world does it. Has Ford charged the same price for a car for the last 20 years? Do the clothes you buy cost the same they did 10, 15 years ago? Does a house cost? Everything goes up. Why do people think restaurants shouldn't follow the same plan?
You know, Chris, I want to just interject a minute. You raised some very fantastic points, almost to the effect that you have to think out of the box as a restaurant owner. And one of the things you spoke about, specifically about menus, something that Helen and I are planning on doing, instead of having, maybe the whole menu needs to be designed maybe in balloon packages, like, for instance, a conglomerate of different dishes, in one, package, in one, in another, to moderate the prices so that, there's things on the menu, for instance, that are
almost like one from column A and one from column B.
Right, exactly. So that it's not as expensive to, an individual in general. One of the things that, Jeff and I were talking about yesterday, especially in the restaurants, is that I can't understand how so many restaurants out there are not marketing themselves right or coming out with creative suggestions. And some restaurants are paying like $22,000 just alone in rent. And yet it's like, what is really the answer here? If you don't do catering, for instance, or you don't do sell some of the products online for that matter, or do parties or catering events to compensate for everything, I just don't know. You just become stagnant and there's no evolution in what you're doing here. And a lot of the restaurants, they depend on the people within that area. But if the people are not interested, there's nothing in there that's going to attract the people. Then how are they going to, how are they going to get more customers?
Yep. So, I could go on for hours about this topic. Again, for me, I consider myself to be, I hate to use the word ruthless, but I think you have to be a ruthless businessman when you're in a business like restaurants where you're chasing pennies. And way too many of us aren't. We're not. We're not. We're creative, emotional people. And, I worked for Al Copeland. Al Copeland founded Popeyes. Well, he also had a full service division. I ran his full service division at its peak. I had 40 something Copeland's restaurants all over the Southeast. And even Al Copeland could not make the decision to part with a dish on the menu that obviously had gone from top 10 to bottom 10. And it's like over time, things change. That dish is no longer popular, Al. It's got to go. We got to replace it with something new. You see menus sometimes in restaurants that hardly ever change. And the owners are going, it's a great dish. And my response is nobody's buying it. The other thing is people don't understand how to price their menu. First of all, if you have any hope of making money in this business, you better target your food cost under 30%. I can't tell you the number of people that are running food costs in the 40s. People also don't understand that there are dishes that have virtually no labor involved in them. Like take a steak, put it on a grill, you turn it a couple of times, boom, it's done, stick it on a plate, gone. Well, guess what? You can sell that steak at a 40% plate cost because there's no labor. But the dishes where you have to prep everything, you got to add 10, 15% labor to the cost of the product. So guess what? In order for your profit margin to work out, you got to have a substantially better food plate cost on that item. So you need to have a targeted cost for every section on your menu. Appetizers, salads, soups, entrees, desserts, and you got to understand what are the bread and butter things that you make your money on. Everything else is add-ons, and you strategize accordingly. The other thing you have to know is what are the dishes that you can only get in my restaurant? And the dishes you can only get in your restaurant where somebody can't go and find the same dish in 5 other places and price shop you, that's where you make your money.
Mm-hmm.
We had a dish at Copeland's called shrimp ducky. To this day, you can't go anywhere in the country and find a dish called shrimp ducky anywhere. Okay? It was a mushroom red wine sauce with oven roasted duck meat and shrimp. Fantastic dish. If you can't compare it, it's not a commodity. You can get whatever you want for it as long as people are willing to pay it. Conversely, if you have baby back ribs on your menu, you can go anywhere in the country and find restaurants that have baby back ribs. And it doesn't matter what quality product you're buying or what the setting is. People will compare your price. They will price shop you based on anywhere else they get ribs. So you have to have a strategy for that. You have to understand what are commodities where you're never going to win the price battle and understand where you can win the price battle. And the really smart people, they come up with enough dishes that are unique to their restaurant where they know they're not going to get shopped around. And so you have built-in, cash cows for you.
I think businesses in general, and specifically restaurants, have to investigate means of reducing their costs, whether it be labor or utilities, and talk to somebody like Jeremy, whose business it is to find these cost reduction items. Jeremy, you finding companies coming to you more now, or are you planning on going out and soliciting them more? I think you should be.
I don't know if they're coming to me more. I probably should do a better job of marketing, but definitely there is a lot more traction, or it resonates, this message, with them as business owners, because they're in danger literally of losing their restaurant, their business. Chris, what you say makes a lot of sense. And some of the advice you give about changing things up in the menu,
yes,
confuse the the customer, that's ingenious.
That's great. Yeah, it was great.
That
By the
is,
way,
that gets,
that is
yes.
no idea. I need to be real careful here. I'm not a really smart guy. Anything I'm sharing with you is stuff I've just picked up from over the years. None of those are my ideas, but thank you.
Hey, I mean, it's we appreciate you sharing this with us. And in terms of inflation, the CPI for us consumers is close to 10%. Realistically, it's even higher than that. The PPI is what the businesses, it costs them to produce the goods that they sell. So for them, producers, it is higher than that. And it's an issue, somebody's phone. It's an issue that, yes, restaurants have not kept up with inflation, with the cost of the ingredients, of the food materials. And I've read that it's always been cheaper to buy your groceries and prepare meals than going out. That gap has shrunk.
Yes.
And I've also noticed that restaurants have obviously increased their prices like every other business, but I'm seeing smaller portions and a lot less customer service and longer wait times and all those things. So the experience is not as good as it used to be. And I think that trend may have been already occurring. High school kids were leaving, were quitting before COVID.
Yes.
The lockdowns just expedited that whole process.
Jeremy, if I can tag on, you're absolutely correct. The restaurant business was in a staffing crisis long before COVID.
Yes.
Okay. COVID has exacerbated it, accelerated it, whatever you want to call it. And so the restaurant industry is caught in a vice grip right now. You cannot, the reason everybody struggles with service times and quality of service is, I mean, you can see it. Just go in a restaurant and count how many tables your waiter or waitress is touching. The rule of thumb used to be, like Houston's restaurants, their servers never had more than 3 tables. That most restaurant concepts, the professionally run chains, is 4 or 5 restaurants. I'm sorry, 4 or 5 tables back in the day. I was in a restaurant last week. I easily saw a guy. He told us it was the second day he was trying to handle 9 tables.
Absolutely.
No way. It cannot be done. I don't care how good of a server you are. So on the one end, you have the labor piece. On the other end, you have landlords who during COVID were losing rent all over the place, trying to jack rents up right and left. You had a shrinking customer base during COVID. Trying to offset it with takeout was a disaster because of the fees you have to pay those delivery services to deliver your food. And at the end of the day, the only choice was I got to take my prices up just to keep my doors open. And a lot of people didn't do it. They just went out of business because they couldn't figure out how to make it all work. But the fact of the matter is there's this crushing vice grip that every restaurant company is facing. I can't provide the service. I can't get the people to do it. And if I can't provide the service and get the business, I can't keep my doors open. What do I do? Smaller portions isn't going to get it.
Not going to work.
People also need to understand how the average consumer thinks. And I'm sorry, we think restaurateurs love to think in culinary terms and, product quality and all that kind of stuff. In my mind, I've seen it too many times. The average consumer can't tell the difference between a 15, 20 count shrimp, but they can go, I only got 5 shrimp. I'm not getting enough for my money. And the culinary guy's going, yeah, but they're these beautiful 20, 15, 20 count shrimp.
Right.
I literally did this years ago at Copeland's. We switched a dish from 1620s because you got 3 giant shrimp on top of the dish. We switched to 50, 60s and you'll get 12. This thing went from bottom of the menu to top because people could say, look at all the shrimp I'm getting. Didn't matter that a 50, 60 is not the same quality shrimp as a 1620.
Chris,
people don't, you have to understand what the average consumer's thought process is. And most of them just want to know, how much am I getting for my money? So when you cut portions and try to justify it with, I'm using premium ingredients, you're going to lose. You're going to lose.
Chris, on
And
that,
then,
one thing that I would say, it's how you market that, because we serve higher portions in the US than they do anywhere else in the world. And our country is definitely in a get fit mentality. And if you do it as more of a healthy menu options, and promote that type of thing without removing your other items, you could have a lower cost menu in addition to what you have with what would be considered healthy options. And that might be a way to look at it. It's not a huge difference in the cost, as you say, because most of the cost is labor, but every little bit does help. So that's something that, you know, I think would be a benefit.
I guess my asterisk to that would be, I'm not in South Florida. I'm not on the East Coast. I'm in Southeast Louisiana. Okay. People down here wake up and go, what's for breakfast? And before they're done their first cup of coffee, they want to know what they're having for dinner. A large swath of the South hadn't caught up with the healthy lifestyle that a lot of the
I'm talking the metro areas, like, you know, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, etc.
No, that's wrong too. That's absolutely wrong, because I'll give you a perfect example. Last night, my wife and I sat down. We were going to have dinner, and there are 20 restaurants here in the Plantation area, and we analyzed not the restaurant, but the type of food that we were getting and what the quality of the food was. There's maybe 10 Chinese restaurants, 10 Italian restaurants. There's a fish house and there's wings and everything going on. We knocked it down to 4 restaurants that keep the quality the same and that we've enjoyed over the years. A lot of the restaurants, the quality of the food or the size of the portions has changed. And if you lived in a community for a long time, you stopped going to places that you used to go to, not because of price, because of the quality or the portion sizes. I don't want to go out and buy something, and when I leave with a takeout order, I'm still hungry. And a lot of the restaurants are doing that all over the place, and you're not going to go back. I'm not going back because of that. And the waiter and waiter services, in a lot of cases, it's been takeout. People are not going. Lunches are not around anymore. Half the restaurants in Fort Lauderdale don't serve lunch anymore. They serve an early dinner, not lunch. They're cutting back everywhere.
Jeff, you know, to go back to what Darren just said, and this came up in our 9 o'clock meeting also. You know, every generation travels together. In other words, an 18 to 35-year-old in that generation will travel through life in that generation and not understand a more mature group. So when they're going into a restaurant and they're seeing they're getting 8 shrimp instead of 10, that's their norm. They're not looking at it as a reduction. They're looking at it as norm. You know what I'm saying?
That's true, but I'm more from the South than I am from the North. I understand how Southerners do. I've traveled the Southeast for 30 years. The bottom line on Southerners is they go back to restaurants that they enjoy and that the food is good. They're not worried. They're not sitting back and going, oh, I have 12 shrimp, rather 8 shrimp. They're going back to the same restaurants that they've been eating at for years and years and years.
Yeah, but we're dealing with inflation, and that's the topic today is inflation and what to do to combat it and how to overcome it. And some of the tips that we've heard today, great. I hope some of the
Jeff, I hear what you're saying, but I have personal experience where the customer feedback was, I'm not getting enough shrimp, or I'm not getting this.
But those are the restaurants that are going to be going, they're going to lose the trade.
But again, today's restaurants are stuck in this vice grip.
I mean, I've got one restaurant that I do business with. I won't mention the name. They do lamb chops. They can't get enough. And people from all over South Florida and West Florida come there to eat lamb chops. Why? Because it's got nothing to do with the price. It's got to do with the quality of the food and the service. And they,
Right.
over the last 20 years, maybe they've lost 2 or 3 waiters. Totally.
So I
Waiters and
think
waitresses,
we're
they're there
splitting.
because people enjoy the food
know,
and enjoy the service.
I think
Jeff,
we're splitting
Jeff,
shrimp and lamb, but,
Hold on,
but I'd
on,
like
Rob.
to, if it's okay, I'd like to give you a couple notes, because I think Jeff is making the point that loyalty to a restaurant is so extremely important. And although I think the menu confusion strategy could be a strategy for restaurants that maybe don't have a loyal following, to me, it's how you communicate to the clients. They all know when they go to the grocery store, the prices are increased. I think Wall Street Journal briefing said the other day it was another 13% increase. And I think restaurants kind of lagged behind the grocery stores that were increasing prices pretty rapidly. So I think that it's how it's communicated to those loyal clients and loyal patrons, and so important. And that there can be a variety, and those loyal patrons want to see, if they're going there for certain dishes, they want to see those dishes on the menu where they're used to seeing it. People are typically creatures of habit. So right. I think that that's the most important. And there's so many other ways that hopefully that you've already touched on, like my notes, I'm talking about, okay, ways to save on, with reduced expenses. So maybe there's local sourcing. I know a lot of restaurants will will change their menu and keep some core items, but will change their menu based on local sourcing and what's available and the pricing of that. It's also to find new revenue streams. Someone had mentioned earlier that some restaurants do catering and some don't. And there's ways, just like our business, when the recession happened in 2008, we had to take a really good look at what we were doing. And that's why, we love hospitality, but that's usually the first industry to go down when there's a recession. So we focused on healthcare, industrial, and government jobs, and restaurants need to do the same. And I think COVID kind of got them conditioned into getting outside of their boxes and being creative, at least the strong restaurateurs. And I think that's really important. It was interesting. Craig and I went to a Cuban restaurant in Fort Lauderdale, and he found out that we were local people. So right away, he started treating us extra nice, and he ended up offering us $600 worth of gift certificates for $300. And he probably knows in his head that we won't use them, or we'll use them we'll give them out, and maybe
give them out. You're going to give them out. You're not going to.
And they have the cash today. So those are like interesting ideas there. Everyone knows the mortgage rates went up, right? What, 3/4 of a point a day or two ago. So now you're going to see hopefully inflation coming down. And I was hearing, okay, we want to get inflation under control at 2%. So that's really important. And then I think that, it's going to, hopefully it will even out a little bit. But again, I think COVID's conditioned some people, hopefully some restaurateurs, and they've learned that they've got to really work hard to reduce expenses, find more ways to get people in the door, or for them to reach out to the community, because that's so extremely important. And then figure out some different promotions and loyalty programs where they can build their regular people to come back again and again and again. I mean, that guy, the owner at that Cuban restaurant, by the time we left and we bought, I think $500 or $600 worth of gift certificates, he also gave us a bottle of wine and some empanadas. So you know what, we'll be back. We'll be back, or we're going to give those gift certificates to our team members, and we'll go on from there. But the other thing is, with respect to reducing expenses, I kind of want to tie this all together. And this is what this group is all about, in getting out to those restaurants and helping them with the solutions to grow their business or reduce expenses. So I think that's really important to kind of go around with us to how do we do that? And I know between John Marinick and I, we've shared information and put together spreadsheets and showing in education restaurateurs that those equations, like Chris, you mentioned that the food cost shouldn't be any more than 30%. So can we post a spreadsheet among us? And I have to go back to the spreadsheet I did, and maybe John can look at his, to give potential clients or current clients a tool to use to make sure that they're in line with what they need to be in order to be successful. So that's kind of in closing.
Debbie, you gave a tremendously forensic analysis of the whole restaurant. What needs to be done to market yourself out there? And Jeff, it's the same thing. If somebody likes the food over and over again, they're going to come back for more and more and more, regardless of the price. Absolutely, 100%. But for the ones that are not doing it, that are struggling, they need more marketing techniques. They need creative suggestions, like you were just saying. They need to get out there, do online things. They need to solicit themselves, maybe even go mobile if necessary. BurgerFi does it. Taco Bell does it. There's a whole variety of things. Many people are just staying there and just waving their hands for customers to come in. There's no marketing strategy there at all. So,
or you can create, if it is you want to maintain quality, but there is some issues with pricing because people don't have as much money going in their pockets. I know, for example, TJ Sushi, they have a happy hour menu, but really it's not a happy hour menu with respect to discount, because what they're really doing is saying, okay, we're going to give you little plate size and you're going to pay half the price, but you're getting half the product. But everyone's okay with that because, it's a happy hour.
And they drink more and they have a good markup on the drinks.
It is like buy one, get one free, but there's different pricing strategies you can use to maintain the quality and then add some other value to it but I think the communication and honesty are extremely important in whatever they're doing, because I understand. I go into a restaurant, the prices are increased. I understand. I know the gas is more, the food cost is more, the labor is a challenge. And I'm okay with that. And I think it's kind of at par with the grocery store. And you end up paying about as much as you would if you went to the grocery store to get ingredients to make your dinner.
Some people even have bands in the restaurant. They get entertainment in there, singers or whatever it is. We had a restaurant here in Boca Raton, Ramona's. We had singers that came in. People came in the droves because, oh my God, this famous singer was in, or whatever it is.
Right.
You need some sort of a fan, something to make it work.
Add value.
All right. This conversation, as Chris said, could go on for days, and it should go on for days. Some of the things that we talked about are great tips, and as you can see, this group has got a tremendous amount of experience and willingness to help out restaurateurs if they need help. And I want to encourage them to give us a call at 561-620-8888. And we welcome having you here at a meeting or contacting us by phone. I don't want to cut this discussion short, but I do want to get our intros in so that we can put it out on YouTube and everybody know who we are. So I thank you all for your input. It was great. Darren, can you start us off this morning?
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Actually, almost good afternoon. Darren Gall, Tracy.net. We take the aches and pains out of phone and internet services. We're talking about price reductions. Most people don't really scrutinize and look at phone bills and internet bills, and that's a big area where you could be overpaying. Everything else is going to the cloud because the cloud helps lower costs, and phones are in that same realm. And we work a lot with the restaurant industry. We help increase their functionality. We can automate a lot of features, as we were discussing, using artificial intelligence to route calls, tying in directly into systems and et cetera. So with labor at a premium, it's a good way to automate things. But as Debbie said, you also make sure that for those who want that personal touch, you always have an option to press 0 and get to a live person. So you're just freeing up your live person to handle that more carefully. So again, Darren Gall, Tracy.net. We work with all the carriers. We help restaurants find the right solution at the right price within their budget. No gimmicks, no gotchas, just great service.
And to hear more about Darren's company, make sure to be here next week. He's going to present some information for us. Chris, you want to tell us who you are and what you do? Chris Rodriguez.
Sorry, I had to find my unmute button. So I actually would love to continue this conversation next week because it's occurred to me that I come from a corporate world. Corporate restaurants have to think very differently than mom and pops. But there's also a lot of things on the mom and pop side that sound easy. But when you're spending all day trying to get people to come in to work, so that you don't have to do all the jobs yourself, you don't have time to do all the marketing y'all are talking about. I'm telling you, these people are in a vice grip, and it is brutal. It is brutal trying to run a restaurant in today's world.
I think.
That being said, we're strategic supply chain partners. We do save our clients money because we help them organize their purchasing better for the ones that understand what we do. A lot of them, do what we call, they price shop every item on their menu, trying to find the cheapest way to buy it, instead of just having a market basket, which is if you go with this program, you're going to reduce your overall cost. We're also going to save you a ton of time because you don't spend all day, every day shopping along with trying to get your staff in. So maybe you can have some time to go out and do some of this marketing. Anyway, typically we save our clients low end 8%, high end 15%. We're doing a really good job on cleaning chemicals for a lot of I'm shocked at the numbers we're seeing on the chemical programs we're putting in place.
I think one of the eventualities of this discussion is going to be robotics. And I had somebody scheduled to come today again and didn't show up. So hopefully I'll get them here for next week. And we can continue the conversation.
There's a lot of cool, I've seen robotic bars. There's plenty of large fast food chains testing completely robotic kitchens. It's coming. There's nothing going to stop it because that technology is getting cheaper and the employees are getting more and more scarce.
Yeah, you can't find employees. That's the problem. The problem
is
you can't fire a machine.
Exactly.
Well, also you were talking about a few weeks ago with the trade show, immigrants for that matter. There's a lot of legal immigrants that want to fill positions.
Correct.
With the rising interest rates too, they say that's going to loosen up the employment market, the potential for people who need jobs. So it's a give and take, I guess.
Yep.
Look, right now, I can tell you that the robotics are just going to be too expensive. But what's happening, and what I just saw at the U.S. Open and a couple other events, is that like even Oktoberfest, okay, they have got so many of them paying $18, $20 an hour, and now they're paying them $10 an hour. And you say, well, how is that going to be? Because it's even below minimum wage in certain areas. And the reason that that's happening is because there's our illegal immigrants or our immigrants, whatever we want to call them, are coming in and they're exempt from paying taxes for 2 years on any additional income that they're making. And the U.S. Open had all nobody spoke English. It was amazing in the back.
Yeah. Well, even at the Hard Rock Cafe when they did the FRLA summit, all the wait staff was non-American born.
Well, they were all Indians.
No, they were all
they
over.
They don't work. They get a lot of money for that casino.
That's true.
It's mostly Eastern Europeans.
John Mulholland, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, am I on mute?
Yeah, you're on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, again, the immigrant thing. We had a small town in Indiana. We had 2 Mexican restaurants close up. Small Indiana. So somehow, some way, we've got to figure out how to take advantage of getting these people that want to come to our country and get them legally in here and get them to work.
Right.
I don't know the answer though.
I do, but they won't listen to me.
Well,
I will.
Come on, Jeff, you let them know.
Well, the what, you know, we deal with a lot of restaurants. We deal with a lot of retail stores. The biggest, I mean, the one thing that almost every store needs to have is consistency. And the restaurants need the consistency, and consistency in the food quality and in the waiter service and stuff like that. But I mean, sometimes we go into restaurants and the food is absolutely delicious, but they're losing their waiters. There's no consistency. They don't know what they're doing. When you sit there and you're finished with your meal, the plate sits there for another 5 minutes. Well, that's annoying when you're going to restaurants that you enjoy the food. If the service isn't what it used to be, that's another reason not to go back to the restaurant. And then you go to other restaurants where the service is absolutely wonderful, but the food quality changes every single week. So the restaurant people have to get their act together and say, this is what I am. This is how I have to go do my business, and we're going to build a business around that. And if you can't do that, then you shouldn't be in the restaurant business.
And yes, touching on that, we had gone to a restaurant just real quick that we used to go to often. And I have to tell you, I told Howard, look, I'm not a snob, but the food quality is horrible now. It wasn't, I can't eat this. And I'm not a meat eater, but I bought, you know, like a 6-ounce filet, and it was horrible. And I couldn't eat it. It was never like that before. And I get it because they're trying to save money, but they lost a customer over it. And the price went up.
It's not so much that they probably did that, but I've gone into restaurants, they keep losing cooks because they don't want to pay their cooks properly.
Yes.
Okay, you know, this whole discussion that you're having now is we'll have to table for a later date because I want to get the intros in. It's important for everybody to see who we are before we have to leave. So Debbie, good morning.
Good morning. My name is Debbie Danto. I am one of the owners of Danto Builders, along with my husband of 20 years, Craig Danto, who was born and raised in construction originally in Michigan and came here over 40 years ago. We focus on the hospitality industry as well as healthcare, industrial, and government. We're very active in the community. I am on the board of FRLA, as well as the Greater Fort Lauderdale Chamber of Commerce and the Florida Design and Construction Professionals. We love to take a client from concept to completion. We market to that. So someone comes to us and they have a dream or they have a restaurant they know they want to open. We take them through all the steps, and we even have a booklet available on our website that starts from concept to menu to equipment needed to layout, which is when I call John Marinick. And then we get the team together for the complete design. So John Marinick's my first call for kitchen design. And then I get architects in the area, and usually John and I discuss based on where it is and what type of restaurant, who to use. So we help them with design and construction documents. We help a lot of times with the banks because they need construction documents and they need a budget. So we'll help them with that. And then we move through permitting, and then of course, construction and helping them open them up. And because I am involved with the community, I really try to get them involved as well so that people find out and understand who they are right away. We have a restaurant opening in Fort Lauderdale called Masa. And John and I worked on that together. Actually, John brought us in on that project. And then we have a couple other projects that we're working on. So from concept to completion, or if it's a new structure, we like to say from dirt to done. And we're happy to help any of your clients with any of those steps in between, as well as the whole process. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Jeremy, good morning.
Good morning. I was looking for the mute button. So I'm Jeremy Ben Israel, Ecentropy Business Solutions, and yeah, we could talk about inflation and how it affects restaurants all day. Unfortunately, it is a topic. what I do is I help restaurants, hospitality sector, hotels, assisted living facilities, different businesses save on their expenses, lowering their utilities, wireless, credit card processing, even industrial laundry and linen service. So there's some overlap with some other people here, but my focus is on helping restaurants with their staffing. That's obviously a big issue. Providing their employees a means for them to stay with the restaurant and not quit like so many are. This is a flexible payment process or payment option where they can get paid same day and not have to wait till their next pay period. Jeremy Ben Israel of Centropy Business Solutions, and my goal is to save restaurants and make it a win-win for everyone.
Thank you. John Marinak, good morning.
Good morning, Howard. John Marinak Food Service Consultants. We focus on design and consulting for restaurants, hotels, anything with food. We do anything from stadiums to mom and pops, and you need a restaurant design, we're the people to go to. Thank you.
Okay. Jeff Kranz, good morning.
Hi, Jeff Kranz, Co-Card Payment Systems. We're part of a huge group of credit card processing organizations out of Nashville, Tennessee. We represent every single processor out there. We try to analyze and give every single merchant the lowest rates possible and equipment. We've been in business, right, our office has been in business for almost 40 years. We have constantly analyzing and reanalyzing all of our merchants to make sure that they're within the spectrum of making money and not being overcharged by the processors. The processors are always trying to raise the rates, or they're merging right now. So they are putting everybody in a position of the rate structures are higher than they were before. But we try to get every merchant to stay within the lowest range of that and make sure that while they're doing the processing, that they can do it easily, whether it be electronically, whether it be with a wirelessly, or it be on tabletop where a credit card is taken. We work with all of the different equipment companies, and we basically offer almost all of our equipment at no cost at all. We work with the processors themselves.
Hey, thank you. Terry, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Terry, today's restaurant news. I'm the one to go to, our group here. If you need to know where and when a restaurant is opening in Florida or Georgia, we started adding a little bit of the Carolinas, little bit here and there as we're getting press releases from all over the place. We thought we'd just go ahead and throw a few in when we can. We will let you know the owner, the email address, the phone number. That way they can call and contact any of us for anything that they need. As soon as they sign a lease, break ground, looking for sites. We have people in this group that can certainly help them with every aspect and phase of their restaurant, which we do. And I do give the leads out to a lot of those people, and I let them know who they can contact. So hopefully many of them have contacted each of you. They're watching here on YouTube. You know where to go. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Okay. Everybody that's introduced themselves so far are vendors in the industry. We have two people on the screen who are not vendors. They are quote unquote restaurateurs. They're pop-up vendors, ice cream vendors, not vendors, pop-up restaurant event specialists. So Helen, why don't you tell us, and then we'll get Dr. Rob with his guest.
We're starting Delicious Spoonfuls, which will be ice cream, coffee, and dessert bar on wheels, running events. And our focus is on the employment of people with special needs, including Down syndrome, autism, mental illness, physical disabilities, whatever. And we're going to have a cart taken with us to events, and we're looking at all sorts of additional modalities, that different types of food we can serve, and different employees. And we're currently a sponsored nonprofit working with the IRS right now and getting a full nonprofit status. So we're looking, of course, for donations. And we also have an arm called Amazing Abilities, which will be running different educational events, as well as expos and networking events to bring in the income that we can funnel into our nonprofit.
Okay, thank you. And Dr. Rob, why don't you tell us and
I just want to say one thing.
guest.
I'm going to try to leave out all the titles and everything like that. Helen and I are called Amazing Rob and Amazing Helen, and the reason why is that we all have unique abilities that are different from each other. And everybody here in this group is amazing because they have that same premise. But Helen actually, illustrated exactly what we more or less are going to be doing. I just want to also mention we'll also be catering to veterans as well, because it's a big factor. My father was a veteran, and there's a lot of veterans out there with a lot of difficulties. In fact, veterans are also looking for jobs in the restaurant business as well. I know this for a fact because I'm very dear friends of the the executive director of the Florida Association for Veterans Affairs. His name is General Scott Hamner. And he told me actually last week that there's an enormous amount of people that want to go back to work that are veterans. So besides immigrants and besides people with disabilities, we also have the vets as well. But Helen said it exactly what we need.
Why don't you invite your friend, the general, to come and speak to us?
What to me?
Why don't you invite your friend to come and speak to us?
Oh, yeah. I mentioned this to Howard last week. We had a young lady when I had it on my radio show.
Let Peter speak.
Peter, I'm sorry, Peter.
What?
Yeah, there he is. I'm sorry.
Hello.
I'm here.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the founder and the owner of the World Entertainment and Information Network, online live radio. We've got hundreds of thousands of followers. And WEInetwork.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me. I'm not on TikTok yet. And I hope to be back now that Rob, told me about when this show, this meeting is. I can try and plan and keep this hour open so I could be back with you. We're a great vehicle to help not only restaurants and hospitality, but we've got a great following and internationally. We've got tens of thousands of people right here in South Florida. We've got 67 countries. We've got listeners in, and we discuss everything from sustaining your business, sustaining your family and friends, and employment and marketing.
All right, Peter is broadcasting out of Transmedia's offices in Boca. That was Adrian, if you remember Adrian from early on. And thanks
John
for coming.
Mulholland, and is he still here, John?
He's here.
He's still here.
Okay.
Why?
Well, because I hadn't heard.
Yeah, he did this.
He spoke.
Anyway, I want to thank you all for coming today. Great conversation. We'll continue it again and expand on it next week, if possible. For those of you who celebrate Happy New Year during the week. And
you too. Happy New Year. Healthy.
Thank you. And we'll see you all next week.
Cool.
And if I